we're going to move to letter R of our A to Z's of what it means to be set apart. And letter R is remain in righteousness. We often have questions about our future and what it holds and how we're going to get there. Well, Psalm 37:23 commands us that the steps of a righteous man are ordered by God. Our goal is not to figure things out, it's to remain in righteousness. We want to know what God's doing in your life, so be sure to leave a comment down there and follow us on social media. Once again, thank you for tuning in to Set Apart Student Ministries.
All right, so y'all know that I've said before, right side, strong side, that's a quote from Remember the Titans. That's why I asked you that question. So y'all know that I've said before, we always get to this place in our life at some point where we ask this question of, how did I get here, right? How did I get here? This can be a great moment for you, or it could be a terrible moment for you, right? The tone in which you ask that question is determined by the life you live leading up to that question. For some of us, we're going to be in everything that God has for us, rocking it, killing it, and we're going to be like, man, how did I get here? For some of us, if we don't make the right choices, we'll end up in a place where we're looking back with shame and regret asking, how did I get here, right? Serious, somber kind of thing, but have you ever had like a funny situation where it's like you're just looking and you're like, how in the world did I get here, right? Like what just happened? Like one of those like, what in the world just happened kind of moments. Anybody ever had one of those? Yeah? Just Luke and Serenity? Not really. So I had one. This is, like Brother Ryan was saying, this is one of those like, I'll tell you but you wouldn't believe me kind of moments, right? And for Emily and Matthew that already heard this story, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to hear it again. So it was my first time flying, okay? It's my first time flying. It was May 14th, 2022. I was going to fly to California to film some classes for SUM. I was excited. I say it was my first time flying. I had flown before, but it was in 6th grade when I flew and I was with my parents. It was my first time flying by myself. Now, I can figure things out. I'm pretty much independent, but I still like to know what I'm getting into, right? So I'm asking all the questions, like, what do I do when I get to the airport? I'm very detailed, like I want to know everything. So I'm trying to figure it all out. I get there, like, I love the process. I know I sound crazy, but I love the process of getting to an airport to getting on a plane. Like, I love the process. I love being in airports, all that. I discovered that during this time. However, something else that it was my first time was a Lyft driver. How many of y'all have ever been in like a Lyft ride or an Uber ride? Okay, it was my first time, okay? Now, what they did, basically the airport was about 45 minutes from where we were going to, from the airport to the campus, about 45 minutes. So the school had set like an Uber ride up for me, a Lyft ride up for me, to be able to go from the airport to the campus. I had never done Lyft before, so they're like, you need to leave the airport and go to like this designated place, select that you're ready, and some random person will pick you up. Now I'm like, this seems kind of sketchy, right? Like this doesn't seem legit. Of course, I'm asking all the questions, like, do they screen these people? Like, all this stuff, right? All this stuff. So I click, okay, I'm ready, and all of a sudden it says, your driver will be there in 2 minutes. So now I'm like, what, they were waiting on me? Like, they were just like, oh, we're picking Dylan up. That's what's going to happen. I'm like, okay, they're ready in like 2 minutes. Next thing I know, this car comes flying in, right? Flying in. I'm like, oh boy. And they asked me, my name. I could barely understand the driver, but it's like, this is you. I'm like, yeah. Yeah, that's me. So here I am, Sacramento, California, in this car with this random guy I've never met before, right? Never met before. Then he starts asking me questions about like my family and things like that. Now, I'm a conversationalist. I'm that kind of person. I want to have conversations with people. However, I'm also the kind of person that I don't want to give you information. If I don't know you, like I'm not going to give you too much information. So I feel awkward. It's very rare that I'm in a situation where I feel awkward. But about 15, 20 minutes into the ride, I get comfortable. I'm like, okay, this is not that bad. And then we're on one of the busiest interstates in California, right? It's like going in I-10 in New Orleans, but it's in Sacramento. We're in one of the biggest interstates, and all of a sudden, I hear this sound. Anybody that has ridden in a car or drove a car knows what that sound means. My Lyft driver on interstate, one of the busiest interstates in California, catches a flat tire. Now, I'm like, is this a setup? Like, I don't, this kind of stuff you see in like a movie, like, oh yeah, I got a flat, I'm gonna kill you, kind of stuff, right? So he pulls over on the side of the road on interstate in California, and he just looks in the mirror at me. And I'm like, what? Like, what are we doing here? And he's like, oh, my friend's gonna come pick us up. I was like, yeah, no, he's not. I was like, actually, this is where the ride ends. So, in Sacramento, California, on one of the busiest interstates, never by myself, random people I don't know, I exit the lift car and start walking on the side of interstate. Now, I go to the trunk to get my luggage, and he kind of meets me at the trunk, right? We open the trunk, I get my luggage out, and he hands his hand out like this. Like he wants a tip. I'm like, sorry, not happening, right? Sorry, that's not gonna happen. So I had an option. I could wait for his friend, whoever that was, or I could start walking on the side of interstate. And of course, me being the independent person that I am, decided to walk on the side of interstate. Lucky for you that day, I caught footage of my experiences. Play the video. I'm gonna send y'all this video after I'm safe, but my Lyft driver literally caught a flat tire, pulled over on the side of interstate, canceled the ride. So now I am walking, you heard me walking, in Sacramento, California, by the interstate. So yeah, you won't see this until I'm safe, but this is what's happening. This is episode 2. By the interstate. So I wait for people from the school to come get me. Pretty funny, I'm not gonna lie. Alright guys, part 3. I'm now waiting for people from the school to come get me. Side interstate, chilling. What's up? That's what we do. How many of you would be terrified? I actually felt safer doing that than actually staying in the lift ride. So man, there's these moments where we ask this question, like, what in the world just happened? Like, I was asking questions, like, as I'm walking, I'm like, how did I get in this situation? Like, I'm in Sacramento, California. Like, how did I just get in this situation where I'm walking on interstate? Like, like just a few hours ago, I was at home safe. Like, what in the world happened, right? We have these moments in life where we're like, how in the world did I get here? I start questioning everything. So keep that in mind as tonight we're going to move to the letter R. We're going to move to the letter R. And now I want to tell you this about letter R. Letter R is probably it's probably the most important letter out of all of this. Some of you are like, you've said that before. No. Seriously. This letter right here, if you get this, everything else falls in place. Like, this is the answer, the solution to everything else, and it all falls in place. What's funny though is even though it's probably the most important and it's one of the simplest, it's one of the hardest to actually live out. So if you're taking notes, letter R tonight is remain in righteousness. Remain in righteousness. And we're going to explain what that means. But letter R is remain in righteousness. And to illustrate this story, I want to talk about a scripture tonight that you've probably heard 1,000 times. You've probably heard it growing up in Sunday school. It's probably one of those cute little stories that you've heard, and you're like, oh yeah, 2 by 2, they went in, yeah. Well, actually, it's one of the most horrific events in all of history. It's gruesome and tragic, and it's one of the toughest stories to actually swallow when you grasp it. So we're in Genesis chapter 6. I'm going to skip around. You can follow the scripture on the screen. We're talking about Noah and the ark. Then the people began to multiply on earth, and daughters were born to them. Think about what this is saying, okay? The sons of God saw the beautiful women and took any they wanted as their wives. Then the Lord said, my spirit will not put up with humans for such a long time. For they are only mortal flesh. In the future, their normal lifespan will be no more than 120 years. Skipping a verse to verse 5. It says, the Lord observed the extent of human wickedness on the earth, and he saw that everything they thought or imagined was consistently and totally evil. So the Lord, this is weight right here, right, Serenity? The Lord was sorry. He even made them and put them on the earth. It broke his heart. And the Lord said, I will wipe this human race I have created from the face of the earth. Yes, and I will destroy every living thing, all the people, the large animals, the small animals, that scurry along the ground, and even the birds of the sky. I am sorry I ever made them. But Noah found favor with the Lord. Imagine God being sorry that you exist. How bad did the world have to get for God to be sorry to look at your life? This is the loving God. This is the God that does not want to condemn, but wants to look for a way to bring you to heaven, not look for a way to send you to hell. This is that God that loves you, that wants to forgive you, that wants the best for you, looks at the world and is like, yep, I'm sorry. I got to start over. The world had gotten that bad, but there was this guy named Noah that found favor in the eyes of the Lord. And the story continues as we go to verse 9. It says, this is the account of Noah and his family. These are the most important 5 words I'll say all night. Noah was a righteous man. Everybody say Noah was a righteous man. The only blameless person living on earth at the time. And he walked in close fellowship with God. Noah was the father of three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now God saw that the earth had become corrupt and was filled with violence. God observed all the corruption of the world, for everyone on the earth was corrupt. So God said to Noah, I have decided to destroy all living creatures, for they have filled the earth with violence. Yes, I will wipe them all out among the earth. Build a large boat from cypress wood and waterproof it with tar inside and out. Then construct decks and stalls throughout the interior. Make the boat 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 45 feet high. Leave an 18-inch opening below the roof all the way around the boat. Put the door on the side and build 3 decks inside the boat, lower, middle, and upper. Look, I'm about to cover the earth with a flood that will destroy every living thing that breathes. Everything on earth will die. But I will confirm my covenant with you. So enter the boat. That's a whole message right there. Enter the boat. You and your wife and your sons and their wives. Bring a pair of every kind of animal, a male and a female, into the boat with you to keep them alive during the flood. Pairs of every kind of bird and every kind of animal and every kind of small animal that scurries along the ground will come to you and be kept alive. And be sure to take on board enough food for your family and for all the animals. So Noah did everything exactly as God had commanded him. So we know how the story ends, right? The story ends, he builds the boat, God sends a flood, wipes out every living creature, and the only things that are saved are the living things that are on the boat. Cute little Bible story that we talk about in Sunday school, right? God starting over. Terrible, terrible, terrible. But imagine Noah's mindset with this. Hey, Noah, your world stinks. I'm going to destroy it. Okay, God. Oh, but you're okay. Right. I'm good. Do I need to pray an extra 5 minutes a day? How do I gotta, what's going on here, right? Why am I good? What did I do? And if it was us in our 21st century, we would have a lot of questions, right? A lot of questions. Put yourself in Noah's shoes in this story tonight. I mean, we'd be asking, God, what did humanity do that's so bad that you're just, reset, right? What happened? Why are you going to send a flood? I mean, if it's that bad, couldn't you just burn them all up? I mean, if it's that bad, right, God? Couldn't you do that? Isn't there... Okay, God, I know this... I'm just me, God, but I feel like it's just a tad bit extreme. Isn't there another way you could teach them a lesson, right? And then I'm like, wait a second. Why do I got to build the boat? Why don't you just send the boat? I mean, you're sending the flood. Why don't you just send the boat, right? Why is it going to take so long to build? I mean, you've reached a point where you're tired of the man's sin. So why are you just gonna let it take so long? Couldn't you have just made it simpler? But see, here's the problem. A lot of times we get so hung up on the why that we don't think about the what. We get so hung up on the why that we don't think about the what. And there's 5 words of this story that give an answer to every single question that Noah could have asked. See, Noah was told to build a boat, and while he was doing so, I'm sure he had many questions, right? I'm sure he had many questions, like, God, I'll build this boat, but like, I don't know, God, like, why you gotta do this? This seems a little extreme. God, I'll build this boat if you want me to, but like, isn't there another way to teach them a lesson? You want me to do this, God? I'm gonna do this. I'll do exactly what you want. But like, what's this rain thing you talk about? Like, I don't even think we've ever seen rain before on the earth. Like, what do you mean you're gonna flood the earth? I don't understand, but I don't know. The answer to every question was this: Noah was a righteous man. God, why are you gonna send rain? Noah was a righteous man. God, why are you sparing my family? Noah was a righteous man. God, like, why the animals? Why can't you send more animals? Why the 2x2? Noah was a righteous man. See, to any question that Noah could have asked, the answer was already given. Noah was a righteous man. That's the answer to every question that he could have asked. And here's the point I want you to learn from this story. No matter where you're at in life, no matter your situation, no matter your calling, no matter the victories or the defeats that you have walked in, the answer to every situation in life that you could face is this: be a righteous person. Do what you're called to do. Serve Jesus with everything that you have. Give God everything. Give him a chance. Be a righteous person. This is the answer to everything that you could possibly deal with. If you focus on remaining in righteousness, remaining in right standing with God, doing what you're supposed to do with God, serving Jesus to the best of your ability, I promise you he'll take care of everything else. Don't believe me? Psalm 37:23. The steps of a good and righteous man are directed and established by the Lord. Here's the key to unlock everything in your entire life. If you put your relationship with God as your number one priority, and you do everything that you possibly can to serve him to the best of your ability, I'm not saying be perfect, right? I'm not saying you have to never make mistakes. I'm saying you're doing your best. He's going to take care of everything else. It seems so simple, right? It seems so simple, but it's so powerful. Now, this is a verse that I've stood on for years, right? My favorite verse in the whole entire Bible. The steps of a righteous man are ordered by God. Anybody that's hung around me enough knows when I'm in a situation, I'm going to say, I don't know, but the steps of a righteous man are ordered by God, right? That's what I stand on. But recently, this verse took on a whole other meaning for me. See, there was 9 to 10 days in my life that changed my life forever. And it was in those 10 days that this verse took on a whole nother impact for me. The day was August 14th, 2024. Pastor Alyssa was pregnant. She went in for a regular appointment, just like she had done every week at this point. You know, I was actually in the appointment room with her. They know I'm about to talk about them, huh? I was actually in the appointment room with her, working on my PowerPoint for the message, Saul saw, he saw, he saw, we all saw. I was supposed to preach that a month ago. I remember I literally finished the last slide of the PowerPoint, and I closed the computer, and her doctor walks in. Doctor looks at her and says, it's time. We just went in for a regular appointment. I'm like, cool. It's time, right? I'm about to be a dad. This is fun. This is awesome. This is exciting, right? But then reality hit. So as I do always, I start asking a bunch of questions. And I look at the doctor. I said, hey, I hope you know I don't like the idea of my wife being cut open. So like, is this going to be okay, right? Because it's like 5-6 weeks early at this point, which means she's got to have a C-section, right? I'm like, is this going to be okay? She's like, it's going to be fine, but y'all need to get to the hospital, right? It's about 9:17, 9:20 around this point, right? So I go pick up my car because I had to get an oil change. So I pick it up, meet her at the house, pick her up. We go to the hospital, right? Go to the hospital. The doctor said I could. I asked her if I could. She said I had time to do that. So I go to the hospital, and they hook her up to the thing to track contractions and all of that. And they're like, so you're either gonna have babies by Friday. This was a Wednesday. And you're gonna have babies by Friday. I'm like, okay, I got some time to prepare for this. I'm gonna have babies by Friday, right? Doctor leaves the room, comes back in. He's like, we're thinking today or tomorrow. I'm like, okay, well, we're getting a little faster here, right? Today or tomorrow. And then leaves, come back in. And they're like, we're trying to decide if we want to take you into surgery later or right now. I'm like, okay, so it's today. And they're like, we're thinking about, it's about 12:30 at this point. We're thinking about 5 o'clock. And so, she's got a C-section scheduled here. We're just going to give you a C-section afterwards at 5 o'clock. I was like, okay. So, because I fumbled. I left the one important bag at the house that I was supposed to get, her bag, right? So I was like, hey, do I have time to go back and get her bag and, come back to the hospital before? And she's like, yeah, go ahead. So doctor says, you can go get your bag. I'm walking out of the hospital at TGMC, if you know the revolving doors. I just got out the revolving doors and I get a phone call from Alyssa. I answer the phone, I'm like, hello. She said, come back. They're about to take me into surgery right now. And I'm like, okay, right? Okay. So I'm a planner, right? I'm a planner. So this is kind of freaking me out a little bit because it's happening fast, right? So I go back in the room. All of a sudden, there's like 4 to 5 doctors in there, different kinds of doctors, anesthesiologists, telling her like, we're going to do this and this. And I'm just like, what is happening? People that saw me that day knew that I was in a mindset that I've never been in before, right? So the guy comes to me. He's like, hey, we're going to roll her back. We're going to give her the epidural. And we're going to come back in about 20 minutes and get you. And then we're going to have some kids. And I'm like, okay, right? This was at 1:50 p.m. They take her back, right? They take her back. At 10:11, I look at the clock and I'm like, it's been 20 minutes. 2:11. They came at 1:50. At 2:11, I said, it's been 20 minutes. Where are we at? Like, they said 20 minutes. To me, 20 minutes is 20 minutes. It's not 21 minutes, right? I'm like, where are we at? So then the doctor comes back in and is like, it's time. I'm in all of these clothes. I should have put the picture up there. I'm in all of these like blue clothes and all of this. I go back there. Remember, they came and got me at like 2:12. The next thing I know, I hear this cry and I hear 2:17 p.m. Right? I'd been back there 5 minutes and all of a sudden a baby's born. Right? And then I hear another cry and it's 2:19 p.m. I'm like, what is happening right now? Right? It was weird though. Whenever I was back there in the operating room, like, I was nervous before, but whenever I got back there, it's just like this peace came over me and I was good. And I remember, it's because they were preemies, they had to they weren't able to take the babies with us. Like they showed us the babies and then they took them to the NICU, right? Took them to the NICU and then they start rolling Alyssa back and I'm like, man, I'm just happy. I'm like, man, this is awesome. Like, I feel this peace at this point. I'm like, man, I'm a dad. This is going to be great. This is going to be fun. It was wonderful, right? But then the unexpected starts to happen. The unexpected starts to happen. So they're in the NICU, right? In case you don't know what that means, it's like the critical care unit where they bring babies, right? I don't know what it means. I'm just like, they just got to check up on them, right? They're going to check up on them and we're just going to go home and it's going to be great, right? It's going to be wonderful, right? We got people there visiting us, and the first thing that I didn't like was that she wasn't able to see her own kids. She had to stay in the bed, and so I was taking our guests one at a time to go meet these kids while she had to stay in the room. I didn't like that, I didn't like that. So I was able to see them before her, but I'm like, you know what? It's okay because we're not going to be here that long, right? They're just going to check up on the kids. They're going to check up on the kids and it's going to be fine. Keep in mind, it's August 14th, okay? And then that night, I go to the NICU and I ask the doctor, I'm like, hey, how long are these kids going to stay here? Like, I just got to check up on them. It's going to be fine, right? They said, we're thinking until their due date. These kids were due September 20th. So all of a sudden, my mindset starts to shift a little bit. Now, I go from this happy father that's amazed and glad to all of a sudden, what's wrong with my children that they have to stay for 5 weeks, right? So, of course, all of these thoughts start going through my head, okay? All these thoughts start going through my head, but you know what? It's fine. It's just the process. It's just how it is. They're going to check on them, and it's going to be great. But then we get the first phone call. Hey, is this the father of the twins? Yeah, it is. So here's the deal. There's blood in your son's stomach, and we don't know why. Whoa, I wasn't ready for that one, right? Now I'm the priest of the home. I'm the father. I'm supposed to, keep things straight. And all of a sudden, I find myself feeling this feeling of fear that I've never felt before. This feeling of uncertainty that I never felt before. And I want to know why. And I'm asking, hey, why is there blood in his tummy? And they're like, we don't know. And we may never know. I'm like, what do you mean you may never know? They're like, sometimes these things just happen. So I'm not liking that, right? Like, what do you mean sometimes these things just happen? But you know what? It's going to be fine. They're going to figure it out. They're going to fix it. And everything's going to be great. Then we get the second phone call. Hey, is this the father of the twins? Yes, it's the father of the twins. Yeah, your little girl, last night she stopped breathing 5 times because she doesn't know how to breathe yet. So now, these more thought, what if she never learns how to breathe? What if she's not getting enough oxygen to her mind, and there's these birth defects and all these, and I'm freaking out, right? I'm freaking out. 5 times she stopped. But what do you do when they tell you these things? They never prepare me for this. I can plan events, I can plan services, I can plan things with my wife of the future and have vision. But what do you do when they tell you these things? They didn't tell me these things were coming when I was a parent. So all of a sudden, I have these questions, right? I have these different questions and these different things that I'm dealing with. And my wife's in so much pain, can barely move. I don't even know the next update that's coming with my kids. I don't know what's happening, right? I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't know what the future holds. And I'm freaking out. I'm freaking out, right? And I want to say this is just a little plug. If you know anybody that has been through the NICU experience, just man, it's tough. It's different, right? We were fortunate enough to where our experience wasn't crazy, but just hearing some of the stories and read some of the stories, it is not an experience that I would wish for anybody, right? But I have all of these questions and all of these things that I don't know what the answer is. This roller coaster of these updates, they tell us things are going great, and all of a sudden your kid's not breathing, and things are going wonderful, and all of a sudden your kid can't hold down food, and all of these different things, and I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And through this process, this verse, Psalm 37:23, really started to teach me some things. Steps of a righteous man are ordered by God. Righteousness, this concept of righteousness. Righteousness is being where you're supposed to be with God. Not being perfect, but just being in a good relationship with God. The first thing that I learned through this process, I intentionally didn't end the story. The first thing that I learned through this process about righteousness is that righteousness is the key to your future. Righteousness is the key to your future. Like I said, I'm a planner. I've got events planned through May of next year. I've already started working on nationals next year. I know the first 35 sermons I'm preaching to you guys next year. I'm a planner. But what do you do in a situation where you're not able to plan? I had all of these questions I didn't know, right? What do you do when they tell you that your son's got blood in his stomach? What do you do when your kid stops breathing? The nurses say your kids could be in the hospital for 5 weeks. Your wife can barely move because she's been cut open. And what do you do when these things happen? I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know how I was going to handle the responsibility of keeping these babies alive. I didn't know what in the world I was stepping into. And I remember reaching my lowest point. We had just got this update, and I'm trying to hold myself together because on the inside, I'm freaking out, and I don't know the answer to what they just told us. And then I see her struggling just to walk, and I'm just like, I don't want to do this anymore, God. I didn't sign up for this. I'm supposed to just take my kids home and live happily ever after. You didn't tell me about all this. And all of these questions start to come to my mind. But then I remembered the verse. Steps of a righteous man are ordered by God. And all of a sudden, I had an answer to every question that I could ask. God, how in the world am I going to be the father you've called me to be? Dylan's a righteous man. How in the world am I supposed to keep my family healthy when there's nothing I can do for them? Oh yeah, that's right. Dylan is a righteous man. What in the world am I supposed to do when my kids aren't healthy and there's nothing I can do for them? Oh, that's right. Dylan is a righteous man. And I begin to lean into this mindset that when I didn't know what to do, I could just focus on what I did know. I didn't know what the answers were. I didn't know what the future held. But I know that the Word of God says the steps of a righteous man are ordered by God. What this verse teaches us is that it's not our job to figure things out. It's not our job to determine what the next step is. It's our job to stay in right standing with God. And when we stay in right standing with God, He figures out everything else for us.
Right.
See, righteousness is the key to your future. What do I mean? I may not be able to do anything medically for my children, but what I can do is I can meet them every night and read them scripture. And every night in the NICU, I'm reading Psalm 139. He knit you together in your mother's womb. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. I don't care what it says, but God made you. God has a purpose for you, and I'm going to remain in righteousness. I may not be able to take them home when I want to take them home. But what I can do is I can pray God's favor over their life every single night. God, I know you have a future for them. God, I know you have plans for their life. God, I know you want to do something significant for them. So Lord, I just pray your favor over them. And I started to do these things every single night. Why? Because when I didn't know the why, I focused on the what that God already gave me. Remain in righteousness. Remain in right standing. And the same is true for you. You may not know what the future holds. You may not know what your calling is, what your next step is after high school, or what in the world you're how in the world you're gonna get out of this tough situation that you're in. And you may not see an end, but the answer has already been given to you. The steps of a righteous man are ordered by God. You remain in right standing with God, and He will direct your steps. See, every week I pray for my future. But when I pray for my future, I don't pray, God, let me step into the opportunities that God has for me. I don't pray, God, help me to see the open doors. My prayer for my future is this: Father, help me to stay in right standing with you. Because when I stay in right standing with you, you're going to direct my future. Remain in righteousness. Righteousness is the key to your future. Second thing, righteousness aligns your heart with God's. See, something interesting started happening during this process. I remember, you got to go through this whole process when you go to the NICU. You got to scrub, and they have this tool to get under your fingernails and all this stuff. And you got to go through a door and then another door. It's this crazy thing. And we visit our kids. I get through reading them scripture. I get through praying, and we're getting ready to leave for the night. And I look over, and I notice that there's a new baby named Axel, right? And out of nowhere, without even thinking about it, I'm just like, Father, I pray that you have your hand over Axel. I don't know the situation. I don't know what's going on, but I pray. I know the NICU test they have to pass. I'm like, I pray that he breathes every night. I pray that, he finishes his feedings, all of this stuff. And I just start praying for this kid that I don't even know. And then I remember as well, when we go there one night, actually on a Wednesday, that I was like, hey, I'm not sticking around, I'm going. We go, and there's this family in the lobby that's distressed. It's a situation that many of you probably know about. But I get there and I see this family just crying, and it's this cry of like, somebody just died kind of cry. And so I'm just like, Father, have your hand of blessing upon them. Father, be with them. And this actually positioned us, them being in the NICU positioned us to be a part of this widespread prayer that took place at the hospital for this person, where otherwise we would not have been there. Right? It aligns our heart with God. See, what I learned through this process is that God doesn't direct the steps of the righteous. You need to hear this. God doesn't direct the steps of the righteous because his heart aligns with ours. God directs the steps of the righteous because our heart aligns with his. And that's not the same thing. See, a lot of people misinterpret this verse. They're like, if I just serve God, he's going to give me everything that I want. That's not what this verse is saying at all. See, in 2024, I've gotten closer to God in some deeper ways, and I've noticed that he's answered many of my prayers. Through the process of her pregnancy and the birth, God literally answered every single prayer that we prayed. So much so that I had to unpray a prayer. Right? I was like, God, I know I said, can you hold him until this day, but she's hurting. Can they be born a little earlier? And then they were born. I had to unpray a prayer. It was funny. Right? At first, I was like, oh, God's answering all my prayers because I'm being intentional in serving him. And in other words, I thought I was essentially earning God's approval. But then he reminded me of the heart change, the desire to intercede for people, just this desire to pray for this family, to pray for this baby. And I noticed that what happened was God wasn't aligning his heart with mine. I was aligning my heart with God's. Yeah. And this is the reason that the steps of a righteous man are ordered by God. Not because we've earned God's approval and he somehow gives us favor points, but because we are now desiring and seeking the things he wants. What does righteousness do for us? It aligns our heart with God's. I'm almost done here. I'm almost done. Righteousness, the third thing, welcomes God's favor. It welcomes God's favor. I mentioned that God answered every single prayer that we prayed through this process. But something else happened as well. We were constantly getting good updates. Yeah, I know there was those things we didn't like. But overall, we were constantly getting these good updates, right? They're like, your kids are progressing very fast. One of our family friends is a nurse for 30 plus years. And she looked at our kids. She said, these are the best preemie babies I have ever seen. Right? Most healthiest. We're getting these good updates. And then on that day where that family was distressed in the lobby, we saw another family in the NICU that was distressed. And so it was boom, bad news. I'm like, man, I'm sensing a pattern here. I'm about to walk into some kind of bad news for my family. And I walk in and they give us one of the best updates yet. And I'm like, God, why? Why us? Why are you, I appreciate it, God. Thank you for giving us favor, but what did we do to earn this? Why us? What's the point here? But then I remembered it's the same thing that I've been saying. Psalm 37:23, the steps of a good and righteous man are directed and established by the Lord. I've learned that there's something about remaining in righteousness. It just welcomes God's favor because you're in his will. You're doing what he wants you to do, and it welcomes God's favor. Going back to the story of Noah, we see that God was about to wipe out an entire planet. But it said Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. Literally, every single person on the planet is about to be wiped out. But God's like, Noah, you're all right. What did he do to do that? You skip down and it says, Noah was a righteous man. When we remain in righteousness, it gives us the key to your future. It aligns your heart with God's, and it welcomes God's favor. So, we're at the end. I told you I was almost done. This leads to the question. Through all of this, through the questions of your future, through all of these different things, the question that you have to ask yourself is, are you where you need to be with God? Not some deep question, not some, is there this, is there that? Simply, are you where you need to be with God? Are you serving him to the best of your ability? Are you giving him everything? I'm not asking if you're perfect. I'm not perfect. I mess up. Every day I have to battle things that we're all tempted with, right? But are you doing the best that you can do? Are you doing everything you can to give God your everything? Are you making sure that there's nothing in the way of you and God? Are you desiring and striving to grow in your walk with God? Bradley, you can start that music. I also don't want this to be taken the wrong way, okay? I'm not trying to say that if you serve God, He's going to give you everything you want. This is not some prosperity gospel I'm trying to teach, right? It's not where I'm at. But what I'm saying is, when you serve God, He directs your steps. If you can get that, if you can understand that, everything else is going to be just fine. And I get it. At your age, you're trying everything you can to figure this thing out. Just do your best. Give God your everything. Serve Him. Try to give Him all that you have, because you're going to be in a situation when you have no clue what to do. What are you going to lean on? See, don't try then to be like, oh, God, now I want to serve you. Now I want to give you everything, right? No. Right now, give God everything that you have. Why? Psalm 37:23. Steps of a good and righteous man are directed and established by the Lord. There's another cool situation that happened in that story that I don't have time to get into, but if you're interested, come talk to me afterwards. So the question is, are you where you need to be with God? And, I don't think we necessarily need to have some, 35, 45-minute altar call where heaven opens up, and those things have their place, don't get me wrong. But plain and simple, I'm just asking the question, are you where you need to be with God?